picture instead of the actual link.
I did the
And the picture just takes you into, whatever. It just takes you into, hey, let's tell you about StreamYard. So I always put StreamYard. It's like Zoom, but it's a little bit different. Oh, yay.
There's Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
We are all together. Yay. Oh, can we hear you, Lisa? We want to check and make sure.
Okay, testing.
You're perfect. I'm just thrilled. Well, I'll be sitting back because some of you already know each other. And are you all in the Toronto area?
I am.
Oh, okay. So just like, Oregon, it's a pretty wide state.
It's a beautiful
and there are people who are only an hour apart, and they haven't been anything more than two-dimensional with each other. Like I was saying earlier, collaborated on a book, have been on all sorts of shows talking, and they've never actually been three-dimensional with each other. So you know what? I think that's the way that we will start. I think that Sue and Margot were on first, and you two have interacted, but have you been three-dimensional with each other ever?
Oh, lots of times.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. And Susan, is there anyone here that you've actually been in the same airspace with?
Oh, Sue Lance, for sure. Sat at the same tables.
Yes.
Did great work.
Wow. Lisa, I had lots of interactions with all of you coming up to this moment. I'm excited. It makes me want to go back to Canada, but I've only been as far as Vancouver, over to the island and back a couple of times. A friend from college who married a Canadian who went on to be a doctor, had to go and visit her and see their place. But oh my goodness, I just was looking at pictures of the Ontario area going, oh, there's so much. But for now, I will just ask Lisa, have you been in a room with any of these gals?
No, other than for a Zoom room, no.
There we go. Hey, me too. And then Jackie, have you ever had, like you were on a stage and they were in the audience, they were on a stage, you were in the audience, anything?
Sue and I have known each other for quite some time. I can't remember the stages because usually if there's stage involved, I'm just so nervous I wouldn't remember anything.
Yes.
And Margot and I also have had the pleasure of speaking in the past as well.
Oh, fantastic. When someone goes, I'm going to be a TEDx speaker, I just take a little step away and go, yay for you. If someone says, but you really need to follow a script, and especially the part where you stay within the number of minutes, like for that reason, I'm out. And that being said, I am reminded that one of my words for this year, 2024, is to listen. Sue, can you let our audience know why did I particularly reach into Canada and just keep inviting until I had a screen full?
What made you do that, or what intrigued you about?
Yeah, I think there was something going on in Ontario. And what I remember was ABLE and CAP.
Yeah.
And when it came together as capable, I went, brilliant. That is something that is hard for an aging person to say to themselves sometimes, but certainly others saying, This might be, a little too complicated, new or something. And it's like, no, I want to remain capable. I want to be seen and validated as capable. But it goes beyond that kind of capable.
Yes, I posted, and I think that was the sort of the catalyst. I posted a great story about a model called Capable on LinkedIn, and it's been adopted by the Nova Scotia government and funded as a pilot, but it's existed in the U.S. For a long time, and Johns Hopkins Nursing School has been leading that implementation of that program model, which is a unique model of a combination of an OT like Margot and a nurse and a handy person, and trying to really help people stay in their own home. It involves a team, right? But this was kind of a unique constellation of a team, because a lot of times, and Margot can speak to this in detail, but a lot of times there's like different things in a home that are hazardous, or that could really cause a fall, or things that could be done to make it smoother, and different passageways more accessible, and these kinds of modest things. But the OT, the occupational therapist, has a great lens on the person and the environment and their health and the physical space. And a nurse can look at things like medicines and how well someone's taking their medicines, and risks in the home because of that. So that model is such a unique one. And I'm really curious to see how Nova Scotia does. And Susan spent a lot of time, Susan Steele's in Nova Scotia, how that pilot goes. But that was my most viewed post on LinkedIn.
Wow.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of people saw that post, which tells me people see it as valuable and intriguing and interesting. And so we have to act on that somehow. And that's where this group can talk about how to do that.
Yeah, and when Sue, the way I kind of got into the conversation is because I'm your East Coast representative here, so I'm registered to practice social work in New Brunswick as well as Ontario, and my daughter lives in Nova Scotia, and my kids are, if anything pops up about aging or living well, my kids are always sending it to me, my husband. Hey, Mom, look at this. So my daughter lives in Nova Scotia, and she said, Mom, look at this. You'll love this. I know, I thought of you as soon as I saw it. So then she sent me the press release, and then Sue posted it on LinkedIn. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is appealing to those of us working who have worked in the field of aging for decades, as well as young people like my daughter who's living in Nova Scotia and saying this is what our community needs. So it really did. I can understand how it spanned and spread that message. Yeah. And capable is such a wonderful acronym. Yeah. And what I loved about it, like working in geriatric assessment and as a geriatric educator for so long, what I loved about it is they expanded that idea of the interprofessional team to a handy person. Because as Margot would know as an OT, those root causes of those loss of function, if to use like technical term, are often rooted in the need to change environment. And if we change environment, then we can help people to live better, longer in their own home if that's the choices that they want to make, which most people do.
Yeah. It's so much about health promotion and life promotion, because health is wealth, as well as fall prevention. So that idea that an environment, because we live in a designed world, and I always say, we all have lived and occupied designed, spaces and used designed products and services long before Steve Jobs at Apple said, we need to build these things to not only work well, but to look really sexy when people are using it and being user friendly. Well, that's what, occupational therapists and architects and interior designers have known for a long time, that an environment can be enabling or disabling in reaction or reflection, I guess I could say, in terms of how adaptive it is to the users of the space. Because at any age and stage of life, whether it's a temporary illness or, accident that we may be recovering from, let alone at later ages and stages of life where we may not have the same, sensory abilities. So vision, hearing, certainly muscle flexibility, pain, and mobility. We need our environments to adapt to us, and similarly changes in cognition, rather than expecting us to adapt to our environment. And Sue and I, and probably the others as well, I know Jackie, we've talked about some of these, the breadth of options in seniors housing. And so, rather than just saying it's home or, long-term care or skilled nursing facility, or home or retirement residence, there's this huge breadth of options that are now evolving to meet the growing demand to say, hey, I do want to stay in my home. And the beautiful thing about Johns Hopkins Nursing School and the Capable program is it's evidence-based. And that's so important. It's not subjective opinion. It's not, hey, maybe try these and it might help. There's actually documented evidence on how it saves individuals, loss of quality of life, quality of health. It prevents falls, so it saves the healthcare system on both sides of the 49th parallel. And so it's really a win-win. And yeah, it's really exciting to see it being brought to Canada. And I will say, and no, obviously I'm very much respectful and appreciative to the Johns Hopkins Nursing School for bringing this forward. There have been a few models, including one in the Ottawa area, where a nurse and a contractor started a very similar business and based on this program, and that they've been around for, not quite sure when that company got started. But again, as Susan said, and I know Lisa and Jackie and Sue yourself, would recognize this is not a new situation or problem or opportunity. It's just now starting to get that recognition. And so kudos to you, Sue, for recognizing and posting that, and obviously getting such a strong response.
Lisa?
Yes,
I
Lisa.
have a question. So this all sounds amazing, and I'm anxious and willing and ready to do some reading about this. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how close do you think you are in Ontario at embracing this? I mean, is it in the system already, or is this something you're advocating for?
I would say it's the latter. And I would say that's, as Margot says, there's examples of some similar types of models or businesses out there. But what we don't have in any part of Canada is that type of model scaled up. So it's available everywhere. No. In Ontario, I haven't heard anybody say, any entity say, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to offer this, or we're going to fund this model. No.
Yeah. And I was going to say, the piece to recognize with the Capable program. So it's not just information and, dear homeowner, this is what you could and should be doing. It's funding to go with it. So, and historically, both within provinces and territories, as well as federally or nationally, we have had some quite minimal, to be honest, funding programs in British Columbia. For example, they have the, I'm going to blank on the name and my apologies, but they do have an interesting program, and I think it's running again, and I apologize that I can't remember the name, and it's also being advocated at the provincial level to advocate for funding for the same or similar program, where occupational therapists are not, because so often funding in Ontario and or in provinces and across the country, it's focused on funding the home modifications or the assisted devices like grab bars or handrails, that kind of thing. But there has rarely been funding for the professional services, be it nursing, be it OT, be it contractors, to actually do the labor and the professional assessment and advising. So this program in BC, and I think it's coming to Winnipeg or to Manitoba as well. That's actually including modest fees for occupational therapy services, and then the Capable program would be funded, and equally as important from that, how do we get this happening across the country? It's the evaluation component. And that's why Johns Hopkins is very prescriptive in terms of how you set up the program and evaluate it, because obviously, what gets measured matters. And they want to be able to build on the business case to funders such as governments and even charitable organizations to say this works and this is why we should be investing in it right across the country.
I think, though, Lisa, what stands out to me is that we do have scalable solutions in Canada.
Yeah.
We have so much research and so much, if you want to say, evidence-based practices that are scalable from coast to coast. The will has not been there to invest in the public system in a way that helps ordinary people access the kinds of care that they want, not the kind of care that the institutions want to deliver, but the kind of care that they want to receive. And so to me, it gets to the heart of the will, because you can do all the evidence you want, but if your heart's not in it, then
that's what's led me to where my volunteer focus and advocacy is the fact that my father 13 years ago was under my care in my home, and I was working full time trying to raise a daughter, and I needed community services to support me. The assessment was the easy part, but getting services beyond handrails and accessible walkers was not available. And I couldn't, the slip and falls is, of course, the beginning of the end. And that's where my father ended up, is in long-term care to try and stave that off. But of course, our system, the very first thing you read about long-term care is it's 24/7. Well, it's not 24/7. It's 3.36 hours in a 24-hour period. And so as soon as when he went in, he had a slip and fall, which is what I was trying to guard off and try and stave off by keeping him at home. But nonetheless, my journey began with the lack of community public support for at-home services, which is a lot cheaper in the long run for a government to publicly fund than it is a full-time bed and feeding program in long-term care. So unfortunately, that wasn't available to me. There are, however, in British Columbia, numerous private companies that provide at-home care. There's many named private services, but that doesn't make it accessible to everyone. And so we still have the steady stream going into long-term care for really not the kind of reason that it needs to have individuals move into long-term care. So it's a difficult situation to be caught in.
Yeah, and with geriatric assessment, even in Ontario, we advocated for years, and it really hasn't changed in this one and done assessment. We'll fund one assessment, we'll give you a list of recommendations, but we don't have the system set up to actually follow through with publicly funding those recommendations. And most seniors are on fixed incomes, they live in low income, and they can't afford to follow through on all those recommendations that would help them age well at home.
Mm-hmm.
Let alone English as a second language.
Absolutely.
There's lots of potential barriers.
Mm-hmm.
Often awareness is one of them. But certainly, yeah, Susan, your point in terms of there needs to be the political and the community will to follow through. And Sue and I often talk about this, that, you are amazing at connecting and, blowing the horns and really fanning the flames of innovation and ideation. And then we also need folks, such as myself and others that follow through on the implementation, because a list of recommendations is not healthcare. It's not, personal, family-centered care and support. It's simply information that people can then fall through the cracks. So that's also where navigation comes in. And certainly, I really like, Jackie, how you and the folks that shared spaces shared, I should say, that's also, it's helping with those transitions so that people don't just hear of a housing solution, but that they're actually assisted to navigate through.
Mm-hmm. We need to be more resourceful though, too, right? This is the thing that I say in a lot of my workshops is that, I think when people really encounter the community care system, like Lisa was saying, they realize how bereft it is, how little there really is available: respite care, home care, transportation care, supports, all the things that actually make a caregiver's life as they're supporting someone easier and to support the individual themselves with the daily things they need. And our systems in Canada aren't geared to that, our publicly funded systems. So, but the public have the sense that that's part of our universal health system. So then when they encounter the wall of, wait a minute, there's nothing really materially here for me to stay in my home and in my community on an ongoing basis, that's when things really sort of, spiral a bit. And I'm trying to help people see that, okay, I'm always advocating for universal access of home and community supports, which that sector has not grown in its funding really substantially in a long time in Canada. Mm-hmm. But if that is not going to be a reality, it's almost more helpful to be straight about that and to say, the publicly funded system will help you when you're sick and coming home from hospital. It'll help you when you're palliative in the last year and a half of life. But when you are in this phase of needing ongoing supports and caregiver supports and so on in your community, the publicly health funded system won't cover you. Well, then that opens up a whole other dialogue on what tax credits there are, what resources there are, why spaces shared is a good idea because it's so resourceful and it helps bring money into a senior's home, but also more importantly, the social connection of a student and a relationship. And so we start opening up the resourceful thinking and action if we get a little more honest about what is available and what is not, and what
I have to bite onto that.
Yeah.
Because when you open it up to that honesty, then you also open up the honest conversation of the impact on the publicly funded system that honesty has. So if we do say, okay, this is the lay of the land. If you want to age well at home, you're going to have to find a way to pay for it yourself. It's not funded publicly. Then if you end up in the emergency department because you're homeless and you lost your foot, then that's the impact. If you end up in a hospital bed and you can't be discharged to a long-term care facility and you can't go home, then that's the impact. So the consequences of that, I'm saying, I agree with you.
I agree with you. The lack of supply over here.
Understand the impact and how that impacts a publicly funded system. And then Canadians can say, is that what I really want as I get older?
Exactly.
So also on this same note is not just the individual that's aging through our system, but also the family caregivers that are there. I mean, to encourage family caregiving, you need to provide them some resources, some support, and some incentive. In my particular case, there was no incentive. It was, we all do it out of the love for our loved one, but it takes its toll. And we need to be part of that system and that engagement in the aging process of our loved ones, because if they can't advocate for themselves, they need somebody and some support, whether that be a friend from high school, whether that be a family member, whether that's a legal representative. We need to encourage that involvement. And we can't encourage unless we provide resources. So I think that really that a broader view needs to be taken in terms of including the community at large, whether it be through recreation centers, senior centers, community health organizations, whatever. Another example about the lack of information of resources just came in my world just very, very recently. 13 years ago, my father was assessed to go into long-term care. No one ever asked whether he was a veteran. When he went into long-term care, no one asked, is he a veteran? It wasn't until just a few months ago, I signed up for research. Someone in Ontario was doing research on long-term care and veterans. I signed up for this because long-term care is on my radar. The very first question out of the individual's mouth to me when I was doing this interview was, so what services is your father taking advantage of? What benefits does he have? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, well, he was a veteran. He served. I said, no one's ever told me about this. So I'm in the process now of filling out forms and opening up a file for my father, who just now at 92 is going to be eligible for veterans benefits. Well, it's actually confirmed. So I'm just like, I'm aghast. I could have had financial and other benefit supports when he was living with me to get his, for example, his dentures, his hearing aids, his tilt wheelchair, whatever. These things apparently were available.
That's crazy. I'm sorry that happened, because as a social worker, my first thing would be, what's your VIP number? And any veteran, they might not, even if you have advanced dementia, they may not have known the basic things in life, but they remember their number. So that, I'm sorry that happened to your dad.
Yeah, so I just find it I wasn't privy to take a look at the checklist, but if I had have read it or been in the room to be able to help answer these questions, it would have been useful.
Yeah, and I think that's such a classic example of untapped resources, right? Like unless you are cued to think about or know about or learn about these untapped resources. Like I've helped about 4 people tap into the caregiver benefit of the CPP system, the Canada Pension Plan. So if you have been a person who has cared for children in your adult life and you stopped working for a period of time, you are eligible for this additional income benefit through the Canada Pension Plan. Well, most people don't know about this, and they don't know about that little loophole and that little extra form and that extra step. But then what that gives them is a higher pensionable income in later life. So and these tax rebates, you've just thrown one in, the BC one, Margot, for accessible home adaptations. There's a lot of those provincially, nationally. There's the Canada Revenue System, tax, disability benefits. Like there's so many angles at how to bring these threads of resources together. But if you don't know about them and you're told 10 years later, that's just a waste. That's so terrible, right? It's frustrating. And I don't know if what we can design to allow a better kind of net of support for people as they're learning about all these resources. So then
Lisa, you said something about you weren't privy to the checklist.
Yes, Lisa.
Right. So
what if checklists were just available? It's just, these big billboards that we see, and it's like, here is a checklist. It's available to you to see if you're not, is there something that you're not trying to steal something from someone else. You're not getting the numbers to win the lottery or something. Yeah. It's waiting for you. Right. And you don't even know that hand is out. You don't know that there's a hand to look for.
Yes.
That it belongs to you. Oh my.
So the role, the role of the senior navigator has become a popular role, actually a career. for many people who have either had lived experience or had technical and background in any aspect of seniors living. It's a real role. I've got a friend, actually a colleague, a volunteer who works with me, who's a senior navigator, and they're plugged in, not just tapped in, they're plugged in. And I mean, they are for hire. It's not fully accessible under anything government, but I mean, they're invaluable, especially for family who don't live here and don't know the tax system, the medical system, and yet their loved ones here alone and independent and going through the aging process. So I do know that individuals exist that disclose all this. They know all this.
Yeah.
And it seems in the States with Medicare, I mean, you've got the 100 and some odd page guide and a lot of information about what's available and different drug plan options and so on. But again, you almost need you need someone to accompany you in this process of understanding all of that and seeing what fits with your needs and your lifestyle and your situation, really, your health situation, your financial.
And I think it starts with, and Lisa, I absolutely applaud and respect what you're saying in terms of it's not only client-centered or person-centered care practice programs, it's actually family and community-centered.
Yeah.
And that's, how I try to operate, because I say, the aging journey is something that, if we're fortunate, if we're lucky, it happens to all of us. Some people are going to reach advanced age sooner, just basically, based on chronology. But particularly where you've got an older adult, whether it's a parent, a sibling, a neighbor, a friend, that may be experiencing multiple, comorbid chronic health conditions, as well as acute issues, physical or cognitive. But to sort of sit there or even remotely and basically say, here's a program, here's a service, this is what we offer, as opposed to, and I know, preaching to the choir here, but, whether it's social work, occupational therapy, even, friend to friend or peer conversation, and professionally as well, so all of us, we would say to the client or to the individual and their primary care team, and that could be professional and non-professional and certainly family. It's like, what do you need? What are your goals and priorities? And it's not having those blinders on. And I think more than likely, many of us have experienced either, again, personally or professionally, the healthcare and social service system. And, we can spend all kinds of time talking about how broken it is. We know that. And yet, people do have successful journeys as a result of working with patient navigators, senior navigators, cancer care navigators, social workers, OTs, and others. But I think it's because people in those roles, hopefully, are not so overwhelmed and, understaffed, et cetera, that they're so myopic in this is what I can offer you. I can't offer you these things. So I'm only going to ask you the questions that direct you to what I can offer, as opposed to let's start here and then not based on what I can provide, but what you need. Let's narrow it in and then, bring that information to you. But again, it's not just either A, not telling you what options are available, or B, pre-selecting what information we share, which is a bias that everybody has to recognize that they may choose to do, because it's easier to implement these things. So we won't even talk about those other things. But it's like, I think, Sue, you talked about this before, being innovative and creative and thinking outside the box.
Generative.
Yeah.
Well, and in the options open guide, which I've thrown into the chat, it's the 5 areas of your life: your health, your housing, your social connections and relationships, your caregiving team. And it's a team of people, but there's often a leader, one like Lisa was, is her dad, but there's a mix of people on that team. And then there's the fifth area is your resources. And what I really try to do in that chapter of the guide and in my workshops is open up people's thinking before they are in that crisis, Margot, where you're already narrow because you have some very specific challenges to solve. Learn about insurance plans, learn about the CPP and what benefits there are, learn about the caregiver benefits available in your province, because there are, like Nova Scotia has a caregiver financial benefit, right? But not other parts of Canada. And learn about reverse mortgages. There's all this marketing now for reverse mortgages. That is a whole other topic, massive topic on the risks and benefits of that sort of use of resources and whether it's a good fit or not. But in a lot of these aging areas on the resource side, there's a marketing whole compelling piece that we have to also help people see in a bit more honest way what is really going to fit resource-wise for me, right? And this is where space is shared as an example of taking a housing resource you already have and using it a different creative, as Margot, you're saying, a creative, innovative way for a period of time. It won't be some of these solutions are not forever solutions, but some of them are points in time solutions. But if we don't navigate a little earlier or get information, and if we don't have the right navigational supports, as Lisa says, like there are people now, and Margot's one of those people, offering that kind of navigational support that's more holistic.
Can I go back to that?
Go ahead.
I wanted to go back to this whole idea of this tick sheet driven navigation. I think we need to have guides and have tick sheets as to choose wisely and to start conversations. But when we, like Margot said, when we funnel them people into the solutions that we have predetermined, that's not person-centered. That's not a plan of care. And if we create a system that is so difficult to find resources, or we don't have resources to the point that you need to hire a guide to make your way through it, like who is the system really serving? Like who are we really serving when we make it so complicated that when in the depths of despair, you don't know how to get out of the starting gate? And I think when I'm thinking about, Jackie, your program where you have shared spaces, and as everybody was talking, I wondered, are the people that are sharing the spaces with seniors, do they become like a naturally occurring navigator for those people that they live with?
A lot of times, yes. Happy to talk about the program. I just don't want to lose the early navigation piece that Sue was talking about, I think, creates the opportunity for early advocacy, where we talked about by the time you're in the position to understand what's going on and advocate, maybe you're a caregiver and you don't have the capacity to do any organizing beyond just the day-to-day stuff. And I think because there is that gap in what's it going to be like if these are your unmet needs, what's that going to look like? So for our program, the older adult, I think it goes both ways. It's so interesting how the older adult hosts are able to provide this kind of white glove introduction to a new community, but also the things that the student is willing to kind of help out with make a big impact on their ability to age in place. I've seen lots of times tech support we all know that tech support can be the kind of make or break for our ability to be connected. So I've seen people go from a kind of flip phone to an iPhone and an Apple Watch with the help of their student, which has made such an impact. And when we're talking about kind of the aging in place barriers, those unmet needs are a series of small things at first, right? Garbage day comes up almost every time. That is such a simple thing that we all have to do, and it is such a huge barrier. So the student just able to take that off the plate, where we don't have to now plan our week around garbage day, and we can think about other things. I think when getting some of those easier to meet needs met allows for conversation about, okay, now I can think about adaptive technology. Now I can think about having this extra money. What am I going to do with it? If I have money, I'll spend it on adaptive technology. But if I don't even have the ability to think about that because I have anxiety about just snow and leaves and garbage day and my garden, and I can't kind of figure that stuff out, it makes it a lot harder to do those bigger, longer term goals.
I think your point, Jackie, about that reciprocity of life navigation for the student with the older adult, like the older adult has a lot of wisdom, experience in a community, relationships, networks, right? And that white glove, that's an interesting phrase, but it is that supportive kind of entree into a community or area. Likewise, the older adult, it's like a whole other kind of no man's land on technology that, you know, older adults need the tips on, hey, you just do this and you take this step and you take that step and you set it up and you know, Bob's your uncle. Everybody's, you know, they're set up. It's just such a supportive kind of reciprocal arrangement, and the testimonials from the people that have experienced it are really, when it works, it's quite powerful, right? And your platform helps find the right fit for people, because matching is a key part of what you do, right? The right match.
Yeah, I think it's just like in any co-housing situation, be it a roommate or a partner, it's like that definition of a full garbage can is going to be really important to know ahead of time. So yeah.
It made me think of one of the geriatric assessment we did once. The referral came through because a woman was having reoccurring falls, and the assessor, was an OT at that, or physio, I think it was. She went out and she did the assessment. She did the Tonetti gated balance. She did the complete head to toe assessment. And the root cause of her fall was the fact that she was trying to change her kitty litter. And every time she would try to carry those big bags of litter, that's when she fell. So the solution wasn't physiotherapy. It wasn't exercise. It was some of it, but it wasn't to give her an assistive device. We got somebody to change her kitty litter.
Oh my goodness.
So,
and a lot of those things, it's much more affordable.
Yeah.
Right. To just have that very simple task done that removes that risk. But the focus on preventative, just like we were talking about earlier, just hasn't really been the will.
There was a study in Toronto in the home care system, in Toronto home care. This is a few years ago, where they had a home care worker come for a visit, and they were there to do a bath or whatever. They had 3 questions. So they sort of initially, when they got to the visit, they said, I'm here to help you with your bath, Mrs. Jones. Is there anything else I can help you with? And then in midway through the visit, and maybe as they're getting out of the bath, we're in the bathroom. Is there anything else I can help you with? And then, okay, we completed the task that I was here to help you with. Is there anything else I can help you with? And the kitty litter story, Susan. So often the task people needed the help with was care of their pet, whether it's walk the dog, feed the dog, kitty litter, all those things that can be cumbersome physically, or on an icy street, walking a dog can be difficult, right?
Smoke alarm batteries.
Yeah, yes. Anyway, that was a real, of course, the publicly funded healthcare system isn't going to walk the dog, but it shows you, right, how some of these really basic needs are so key to quality of life, but also safety. Right?
And social prescribing, big area we have to start looking at. I'll give you a prescription for a pill, but what about a prescription to go for a walk?
Exactly. Or go to an exercise class or a yoga class or.
Well, even the information collection upon going into long-term care, again, going back to the check the box thing, very, very quick and forward and upfront, but asking, well, what medications do you currently take? And there's, I think, 3 or 4 sections of that medical, clinical questionnaire, but nowhere in there is an open-ended or specific question as to what else have you been doing to support your lifestyle. What if they're culturally from a different area, which really supports naturopathic consumption and or practices? Like you mentioned, yoga. What if that was a regular part of someone's life? Now they're going into an institution where that's not available, and then you wonder why their their ability to manage these changes, it crumbles when they don't have what they used before to help give them their peace of mind, or their stretcher size, or whatever way they use the tool of yoga. I also talked about many other aids and devices that are not mainstream that are used to support people's lifestyles, like PEMF mats and things like that, that if they're not asked and they're not allowed, or they're not brought in, then that's taking away something that was used to support in a healthy manner that person's lifestyle. So we need to really begin and to use that word holistic. We need to be looking at individuals for who they are. And these the checklists are really guides. They should not be the be all end all. I don't know how in Ontario you advocate upwards for more, the community services and the community supports to be better advertised, for lack of a better word, or at least provided to the community as resources. I know that in BC, in my small part of the world, we have devised a mechanism to elevate our voices in long-term care from the actual resident and family upwards to the health authority and on to the provincial level to provide our lived experience and our recommendations. And I'm not too sure in the community services. I'd love to see the same sort of mechanism, for lack of a better word, to elevate our voices and bring forward some of these incredible ideas, like Spaces Shared and all of that you represent here today.
I think, as you were talking, I think about the campaign out of the UK, What Matters to You. And BC did adopt that. So you were early adopters, and it never really spread. We tried it in Ontario, and it never really spread. But I think that question, like, what matters to you? It just opens up a whole new set of what people want.
Yeah. There's a wonderful resource, free. It's available online, and it's through the Ontario Caregivers Association, I believe. If you Google Healthcare Journey Binder, and it's I think there's maybe 5 or 6 basically chapters, and you're meant to print it off and fill it in. But it's very much, like Options Open, a self guided resource and tool, although really anybody in the public or the private system can do this alongside clients. I know I've used it, and so much like Sue's 5 pillars, it asks you to document, and one of the chapters is about almost that conversations that matter, or the who am I, and particularly where we may have people who may have, for whatever reason, difficulty advocating and communicating for themselves. This document can be very instrumental in the community, as well as in congregate care or shared co-housing living situations. Say, what are the things that bring me joy, the things that calm me down, the things that irritate or aggravate. And I can speak from firsthand experience. Some of the clients that I work with, they're lovely people, and they may not have basically had the opportunity or been modeled behavior around advocating for themselves, and they don't want to complain, they don't want to get anybody in trouble, but man, they really wish somebody would start doing this or stop doing that. And so this document basically says, here's what I like and I don't like. And the other beautiful thing is that because it is intended to stay in the home or wherever somebody is receiving services and supports, it means that the individual clients, as well as those caregivers who already do so much, family caregivers in particular, you're not having to say the same thing, explain the same thing 47 times because you've got a new care provider or you're meeting a new doctor. It's like, and obviously the system needs to be set up, or private providers need to inquire or say, do you have, is there anything you'd like me to know? And it can be, that open-ended. But wouldn't it be very cool if we saw more of these types of resources and documents and binders, so that somebody can go, yeah, here's a binder, or so we certainly know Sylvia Verkley from Reminisce Art, who does the story of me, which is photographs over an individual or a couple's lifetime with short but impactful descriptive captions, so that anybody entering that older adult space not only can use that as a conversational tool, but also to see that the person that they're helping to support and provide care for is a person, not just another task.
Yeah, they see them a little more, again, multidimensional, their earlier life, their family. It's a great idea. The caregiver journey binder, the healthcare journey binder. I know the home care system. Some of the home care providers in Ontario had similar versions of that sort of thing in the home, and particularly towards the end of life, when there were a lot more people coming in the home and the person is transitioning at the end of their life, that continuity of information and the kind of the interactivity of a one worker seeing and then the next worker seeing that same information, it was just such a valuable tool. So I think it sounds like it is such a good idea. And I think that one of the things I've been thinking a lot more about is our life stories unfold over time, and we go through a process in later life of almost re-understanding our life stories as we encounter new experiences and new challenges and our losses. Yes, Christine, you wanted to jump in on that.
Our time together is transitioning.
Speaking of transition,
it is coming to an end. And I can always feel that there's a change. We've spent this time together, and now, we've gone from kind of helping each other to know each other but isn't it just down to who we are as people? And I'm just like, and another hour should start. Talking about that, all the government agencies, all the hospitals, all the senior navigators, everyone is a person who expects to age. And who are we? Who am I? The two words that I'm coming up with, and I'm warning all of you, we're going to start with Sue, then we'll go to Lisa, Jackie, Susan, Margot. We'll all give our how to get hold of us, where we want you to find more resources, more answers, because this hour, did we touch on so much? And you were all right when you were saying we can talk about what's wrong, but here is what has gone right. I just loved it all. My two words are stay and still. From an outside person looking at someone who has experienced change in their body, in their mind, saying, can they still do this? Can they stay living where they are, to going to that person asking themselves, what can I still do? I still want to do things. I want to stay or live where I choose to live, to going to, this is how I still do this. It's really weird to go from the age where no one questions whether you're going to do what you want to the age where everyone's just like, are they still living at home? You know, based upon maybe just a number. They haven't really seen this person. But we'll start with Sue down to Lisa and around back to me, and I'll get my little books ready. Sue, how do you want people to get a hold of you? And my husband, D. Scott Smith, motivational listener, who is also the producer that makes this even possible, period. D. Scott Smith, motivational listener, is going to pop in those links that you provided for us.
Okay. Well, the best way to find out more about the work I'm doing, particularly the educative work, is at collaborativeaging.com. And then, yeah, there's my email, Sue Lance. It's sue@collaborativeaging.com. And I've given the link to Options Open, the guide that I've written, 2020. I wrote it, and it's now 2024 in its 5th printing, and I'm updating it annually. So people can always find the links and resources, because there's so many new resources always. And this goes back to that discussion we had. So those are my 2 ways to reach me. And LinkedIn, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Marvelous. Lisa.
Yeah, so I had thought about what I sent you earlier in terms of a contact, and I'm best reached at the provincial level at the Independent Long-Term Care Councils Association of BC. So that's the acronym you see by my name. But I provided you with the regional, the Vancouver Coastal Association of Family Councils. And so in the chat, I'm also going to put the website of our provincial level, which covers each region in British Columbia, each region where those loved ones, family members, and friends of residents in long-term care can connect to find out how they can start a council, a family council in their long-term care home. It's that crucial and government-supported mechanism of elevating the resident voice and experience in long-term care to our health authorities and to our Ministry of Health, so we can really take advantage of that engagement and be able to provide input to the decisions that directly affect residents in long-term care. So, and yes, I have LinkedIn and also Facebook, of course.
Fantastic. And not an empty threat. My husband and I could actually go up, stay overnight at my cousin's house. They're involved working at SeaTac, the airport there in the Seattle area. And then we can cross the border because my passport is still working, and we could just meet.
Yep.
Because it's like, wow, that's so easy. I can just do it. So watch out.
That's good. You're welcome.
Yay.
Anytime.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you'll tell us where we're going to meet. Jackie, your turn. Spaces shared.
Yes. So I think I put the wrong email in the LinkedIn message I sent you. So it's Jackie@spacesshare.ca. The one that I also put in was customer success at spacesshare.ca. We'll check both of them. And I'm also on LinkedIn.
Great. And you're Jackie Tanner, Spaces Shared. Is that just Spaces Shared dot something or other?
.ca. Oh, I can put, do you want me to put it in the chat? I will put it in the chat.
Oh, you may as well. And then he can pop it in while Susan is talking. The both the ones that you mentioned, because you said it so fast. I'm just like, and what was that number again? You know, I need it nice and slow, especially if someone is just finishing up, doing some chores around the house. They're like, I can't really watch them. I can't sit and watch, but I can have it going on in the background. It was like, what did she say? So thank you so much. Susan, your turn.
Okay, so I can be reached. Probably the best way to reach me is on LinkedIn for anyone watching this. my space now, after 30 years in geriatric as a geriatric specialist, it had transitioned over to being a family caregiver for my mother, who was in long-term care in New Brunswick, where the legislation allows long-term care operators to evict residents for any reason without, there's no rights protection, and they can do it for any reason in 30 days. So my work right now is to raise awareness of the need for national legislation for safe long-term care to stop that from happening, to put in rights protections for all people living in institutions, and ideally to create the right environment so that doesn't have to be an option. If people fall, they shouldn't be a fast track to an institution. So that's where I put my charity work and my energy into being an advocate for positive change within that space.
Thank you. Margot.
Great, thank you. And I just want to, do a shout out to you, Christine. This has been a wonderful conversation and pleasure to have the chance to, meet virtually. And I know some of us have met in person, and hopefully the rest of us will get a chance at some point. So the best way to reach me is either via my website, which is the name of my business. So www.inclusiveaging.com. Or Margot, which is MARGOT at inclusiveaging.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn, and would be happy to hear from anybody who might just have some inquiries and are looking for a trusted advisor to support themselves or their loved one on that aging journey, whether it's through home modifications and home safety, caregiver coaching and support, and certainly that senior elder patient navigation aspect, as well as end stage later, late life palliative care, end of care life journey.
Awesome. So, and tell them Aging Better Network sent you. I was thinking, someone sends you a little, I would like to be connected to you. I heard you with, these folks, I saw you on aspects of aging, which is what I call this segment. Aging Better Network is the resource spot that I host. And oh my goodness, I just want to hire so many people to put so much more there so that I can be my own billboard that says, there are so many options. Become aware now, today. No crises happening. Everything's doing fine. Come, may as well know something about the next portion of my future, which could be the third of my life. If I always start the next third of my life on my birthday. And then I figure, okay, 64. So half of that is 32. So I will aim to live another 32 years well, not just stay alive, but, have that health span and that ability to impact other lives well. And yes, I could really see us having a student move in, take out our garbage. Oh, yes, please do that heavy kitty litter. Oh, and bring in that big bag of dog food because it costs less when you buy the bulk. Do those things. Notice if I'm changing in some way. Talk to me about it. I would just love knowing that someone was going to come home to my home and find me wedged between two pieces of furniture going, I just couldn't get out. I'm not even sure how I got here. Just knowing there's going to be somebody coming home at the end of the day would make a big difference. So I have 2 writing projects, both of which my husband encouraged me to do. So Caregiver Kit is actually a practical guide to a real kit. I've got my basket right here, and I show some of the things that are in my basket for one reason or another, and it changes. And as I go through times of grieving, having to do with having been a hired caregiver who went into the person's home that they were staying in, but also having to do with my own personal losses and re-grieving and anticipatory grieving as loved ones and friends have diagnoses that are going to be final. I just wrote down a few things. It was an article for LinkedIn, and my husband said, stretch it. Let's put in some of my things because he grieves differently than me. I guess everyone does. And stretched it to be a book. And a person in my state who works with people, oftentimes needing dementia and remaining home. Those people, those loved ones of people who are continuing to live in dementia have said, I feel like it's such a nice short book. I can actually do this. I can create my own first aid kit for my grieving or my care package that I go to and decide to grieve well because I'm worth it and I want to continue on and I don't want to just stop caring. So Care Griever Kit. The other one, that's the big book, is Pre-Act Your Age, and it has to do with what I kept hearing from people, what they're doing ahead of in advance of their own advanced aging. And I thought, this is fantastic. I've been in these homes where loved ones are dealing with difficulties and also saying, hey, that's going to be me. I plan to continue. What am I going to do with that? Or who is going to take care of me when I get old? I don't, so it's just everything from, building your group of people who you can go to them and say, I just want you to know that this is what's important to me. If I am hit with one of these typical, and I did find 52 of them, so that's why I say it's probably going to take a year to get through that book. 52 different aspects of aging. Problems, yes. Also, opportunities to say, hey, I'm going into a new era of life. What am I going to do with this? What's important to me? Or how do I navigate things now? So how would I want them navigated in the future? And to get that documented and communicated and even practiced. I noticed that one of our people had to go. They probably had something that they are already 7 minutes late for. Thank you, everyone, so much. I have loved visiting Canada today. I just want to go there right now. Thank you, everyone. I'm waving goodbye to you. I really